right, everybody, we are live. Welcome back to Now That's Debatable. This is your host, Fantastic Facade. I'm joined with Triboulet-the Humanist, my co-host. And, of course, we have Morefreeus on for today as a guest. Welcome back, Morefreeus. Hope everybody can hear us okay. I'm having some intermittent connection issues, so I'm probably going to be doing a lot of more of a sideline kind of overview thing. I'll step in if I can, but you're not going to be seeing my face probably because it's just killing my internet right now. I don't know if the whole street's having issues or what. So that's why we're a few minutes late. But in the meantime, feel free to say hello. If you have any questions, I'm going to change things around a little bit on the screen. Going to get chat up and going. I'll monitor that. And before we take off, AAA, if you want to go ahead and give Relic Media our usual plug, that'd be great. Go ahead and get us started, and we'll go ahead and take off on cancel culture.
Yeah, Relic Media is a new streaming service for podcasts. If you have a new podcast, you want to get it off the ground, you want to get more listeners, hit us up, hit up Relic Media directly. We'll get you in touch with the right people, and maybe we can get you part of the Relic Media family. That's all that I wanted to say. So we can just go ahead and, I guess, start with the conversation. So, Morefreeus, can you tell me why you're opposed to it? Then I can tell you why I'm not. So,
to be clear,
council culture.
Let's at least get a little bit of an introduction to the topic. I know it's the title of the video for everyone, but just a heads up. Today we're talking about cancel culture and whether you're pro or con. And if you have an opinion on that that's opposing to either Morefreeus or myself or Triboulet, go ahead and spit it out in the chat. But in the meantime, we're going to go ahead and get started. Morefreeus, if you don't mind starting us off on your thoughts. Seems, I think, from the little bit I've gathered, that you're anti-cancel culture, or you're opposed to it in some way. If you could just kind of express your thoughts to us, let us know what you oppose and why, and we'll go from there.
Okay, sounds good. And just I'm just gonna do a quick mic check if everyone can say they can hear me, and I'll continue.
Loud and clear.
Okay. So my general opinion is that in a multicultural and diverse, I guess homogeneous society, heterogeneous society that we have, that I think that cancel culture is moving in a direction that is not helpful for society. I think that it's in a direction that is against tolerance and understanding of competing and different ideas and values. And so as a culture, I think that principally speaking, we should be able to hear other people's opinions and values and tolerate them at the minimum, which is coexist with one another and respect the humanity in other people, even though they have different opinions. So that's in that general sense, I'm against cancel culture.
So you said it was headed in the wrong direction, but are you not against it entirely?
I think that there's exceptions to everything, but
Okay.
generally speaking, I think that tolerance is the best way forward and not canceling.
Okay, so here's my point of view, and I'll preface it with a question. Do you believe that there are views, opinions, beliefs that that society would be better off without? I.e., racism, sexism, homophobia. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just thinking.
Okay. Like, that's
I think
racism. Do you think society would be better off without racism?
So I think that generally speaking, it's better to listen to the opposing side's views, regardless of what the idea is, if it falls into the realm of. Because here's the thing. But that's my answer, though. I mean, if you're going to ask me, I mean, when you say,
I don't feel like that's
quote
an answer to
unquote,
I'm asking if society is better off without racism, not whether or not we should
Oh,
listen to people who
sorry.
disagree with
Gotcha.
us.
Got
Yeah.
you. I would say that this is the best way I can give you an answer. Abstractly, yes, but in reality, there is no way to remove racism from society.
Okay, so but regardless if we can
So
get
if you
rid of
want to
it,
talk about abstractions in the
sure.
realm of utopian fantasies, yes, of course. But
Okay, so
you have to
okay,
understand that to get to that point is
I'm
very dangerous and
but
difficult.
I'm not saying how to get there. I'm just asking like if it would be
But you got to
better.
take that into consideration, in my opinion.
Sure. Yeah,
But yes, in theory,
that's not the
I would
direction
agree
I'm
with
going.
you.
Okay, cool.
Yes, in theory, in an abstract philosophical sense, of course,
Sure.
yes.
All right.
Yes.
So there's two ways that you could go about it, right? You can it can be voluntary or involuntary, like through like coercive action, government, right? So let's talk about the latter example. We're talking about like involuntary. Somebody says, I hate Jews or something. And so he has a baker shop and says, I don't want to serve Jews, right? And so the government could just step in and force you to serve Jewish people. That's one way. That's coercive, very intrusive, and also I think it'd be very dangerous because it is tantamount to getting rid of free speech because he has a right to have that opinion, and it's like the government is forcing him to change his opinion. And there's the other way is to use through a voluntary method, right? So you could just disassociate. I can say, you know what, since you're anti-Semitic, I don't agree with that principle, so I'm not going to support you or your business anymore. Those are your only two options. The third option would be to do nothing at all. So what is your preference? Coercion or non-coercion, voluntary or involuntary?
I think, principally speaking, voluntary is probably the best option.
Cool. So that is exactly what council culture is. Like, it's just you socially ostracize someone with really bad beliefs, with a racist view, bigoted view of any such. And so the individual can do it, and then it could be done on a collective level. I could say, you know what, since you're anti-Semitic, I'm not going to go to your bakery anymore. And I say, hey, Facade, that guy is racist. Let's not go to his bakery anymore. And then Facade's like, yeah, okay, we'll do that. And then if we see this guy trying to sell cakes to anyone else, we make sure to tell this potential customer that this guy is racist. That is cancel culture in a nutshell. It's just socially ostracizing people, and it's completely voluntary. It only works if it's voluntary. If the society does not agree with the principles, it won't work. Because if you're just like, oh, I don't care about anti-Semitism, I'll just go to the bakery anyway, he'll just stay in business. So this is just a check. This is a way in a free society to get rid of poisonous ideas such as racism, such as or any sort of bigotry.
Yeah, but you're only using one example. If you open up the gates to allow this for anything, then it's open to anything.
You said open up the gates. What do you mean, like allow people to cancel people?
You're just using one specific example.
But okay, but what do you mean open?
I can give you an example of where someone was fired for just stating a biological fact. So
sure.
I guess my point is,
so
what you asked me,
okay,
what my opinion was on cancel culture. I'm saying, generally speaking, I think that we should practice tolerance and not intolerance, regardless of the views. Now, when there are exceptions to that, of course, and you brought a good exception up, right? Which is something as I would say is I said severe, but
could you explain what you mean by tolerance?
Yeah, respecting someone's humanity even when they disagree with you. That's tolerance in general. So, like, for instance, if you're Christian and you believe that marriage is between a man and a woman, and you don't believe in gay marriage, respecting that person's humanity and their religious freedom, and not wanting to cancel them and just destroy them in their lives.
Well, sure.
That's just one example.
Well, okay, like as far as wanting to destroy someone, I mean that's just a thought, like a desire that someone has. I mean that I don't. I mean, sure, but I mean,
famously speaking, we can look at.
But there's nothing wrong with having a desire to, I mean, to destroy something. It's when you act on it, and then what are your actions? But what
I'm saying that is it good? What I'm saying is like, should the rule be cancel culture? No, it should be tolerance, and then in exception, we can look at specific exceptions to that. That's my argument.
Okay, so because when you said tolerance, like you're saying, just hearing the idea about respecting their humanity.
Not trying to take away their livelihood and ruin themselves, their public image, and all that stuff because they have different opinions. That's the general consent or the general consensus. I think most reasonable people have.
So let's say you're a racist, and then I'm telling people you're a racist. Do you think that's disrespecting your humanity?
I think it would depend on the merits of your claim.
Well,
because everything is racist.
Okay, so let me jump in and ask a question.
Literally, disproportionate outcomes are racist nowadays. So, I mean, it would really depend.
Okay, I'm not
in a traditional sense.
Sure, that's a straw man. That's not what I'm talking about.
Let's just.
I don't. That's what we have to clarify. Right?
I have a hypothetical. So let's just say hypothetically, there's a guy that owns this store, okay, and on the front of the store, he posts things that are blatantly racist. Like he's dropping the N-bomb, saying that black people aren't welcome, saying that if you come in wearing head coverings that you'll be asked to leave, and if you don't, the police are gonna come. I mean, like just like overly and abundantly, like all over social media, posting the fact that, you know, he thinks that the European whites are the supreme race and that they're the best thing that's ever happened. Okay, I'm just painting the most clear picture of a racist that I can. Okay, would you say that it's okay for you to continue to support his store even though he's blatantly racist in his acts and views and the way he's operating that store? Or would you say the better option would be to support a store that doesn't have someone with those views?
Okay, well, let me make a few statements on that. Number one, the other option is not supporting them, right? You don't have to support the store. You can just
by going in and buying things from them, you're supporting their store.
Okay, in that sense,
because you're providing them money.
No, I understand. If that's what you mean by support them, just actually using their service, and then
utilizing their services, their store, instead of like another store that doesn't have such views. That's what
I would say. Just like if anyone, and this is a great time to bring this up. If anyone wants to go back and listen to my original statement, you'll see that this falls into the category of, not generally speaking, but exception to the rule. And so, of course, in this scenario, you know, you wouldn't say that this falls outside of the principle, right? This is a very explicit and defined case where someone is carrying out racist language and racist actions, and in that specific case, I think that cancel culture is, you know, it would be okay in that specific case. But again, when I say generally speaking, I mean there are going to be cases, like with everything, where it's so egregious where most people would agree. The problem is we don't want that to be the rule, and that's kind of my point here. That shouldn't be the de facto fallback. Oh, I disagree with this person, let's cancel them. And I'll tell you this. I think most people, let me just say this, most people that if we were to sit in an audience and you had half conservative and half liberal, most people on the conservative side are just saying generally what I'm saying, right? Yeah, I mean, most reasonable people would say that let's try tolerance first. Let's try discourse and debate, and then, you know, if the last straw
that is tried. Okay, so give me an example of someone being counseled over an idea that hasn't been discussed.
Sorry, I was
I was asking. So
wiping my face.
okay, you were
So-
saying like try debate and discussion and all that kind of stuff.
sometimes
I want to
sometimes
give me
you
an
just have to
example.
sometimes you just have to live with the fact that other people have different views. In the case of in an explicit case, like specifically believing that a race is inferior, I think that's where you have grounds to try to do whatever you can to
Sure, cool. We agree
to
on
cancel
that.
their business or whatever. But in most cases, sometimes, in my opinion, let me not say sometimes. Generally speaking, most views should just be tolerated, and the people that believe those should be tolerated, and those
Okay.
specific
So should
ideas
the
should be
views
battled.
of Hitler be tolerated?
Those specific views should be dealt with in two ways: one, politically through political action, and two, through discourse and debate. Those are your two options I think that civil society should use to come to an outcome of a specific belief or value.
That's to me. That's
Yeah.
exactly what's happening. So that's why I
No,
was
that's
asking.
not.
I wanted. Okay, that's
I can
why
give you very
I wanted.
specific
I wanted.
examples of where
I wanted.
it's gone too far.
Okay, like can we
Sure,
can you
that's
provide
fine.
some of those?
Yeah.
It-
So there's
also,
been
I want an example of someone being canceled for something that was never discussed or never debated in the in the public square.
So I'll bring up two famous situations. One is a Google employee that said there were differences between men and women, and he was let go. And then there was also
but that's not
scientists.
cancel culture. Somebody just got fired.
Yeah, because the people in the organization
Okay, but,
basically said something needs to happen with this person, and
Sure,
he
but-
was fired.
and then he's
and then-
employed for another
It's still canceled. He got let go. That's what I'm talking about. If
Okay,
you want to
wait a
redefine
minute.
it, that's
So
fine.
you
But this
saying
is how
any sort of like if let's say like I say something racist.
So
on
if I'm employed by McDonald's and I send out an email. I'm sorry. What?
I was asking for example. So are you saying like any sort of action that's taken against me for something that I said that's counseling?
Any retribution towards a view that is not held by people.
Wait, let me clarify that real quick. You think that Google shouldn't have the right to fire whoever they want for any reason?
It's not about if they have the right. It's about if it's generally good.
That's exactly what we're asking. Does
I thought
Google,
this
a
was
private
about cancel
organization,
culture, not about rights and policies?
To me, you're kind of conflating two things because culture is people. Google is a private organization.
Yeah, but
so
Google
culture is what like we're talking about when we say like we're gonna boycott this store because this dude's putting up racist stuff. Google firing someone is not okay, but I'm not going to your specific.
You're going to the extreme example. I'm just saying.
I mean, okay,
said,
nonetheless, let's take a less extreme example in which a dude just occasionally drops N-bombs and says that black people are inferior. Okay,
well, in
that's much less severe than him trying to hang people in a store.
That's not happening all the time, though. People aren't going to Google and doing that. People are going to Google and stating biological facts and getting fired.
Okay, but again, it's a private organization. They should be able to do what they want. How
about a university professor that gets stormed out of campus at threat of violence because he's stating biological facts? This is a professor. This is the person you're supposed to be learning from.
Okay,
and the students are hunting him down with a bat on campus. This is the Evergreens incident. But we don't care about that. We want to talk about something that's not even happening, which is people going in with
hold on, pause. You're changing
you guys
the
are giving the
here.
craziest examples.
No. I mean, I even put it back.
Example.
Like, that's not a crazy example. Like, I put it back. My whole point being,
that's crazy.
My whole point being that if you continue to tolerate these ideals, right, and tolerance is fine to the extent of tolerance may be, but when you're continually doing something or oppressing people or attempting to oppress people after this has been discussed over and over again, after things like racism, for example, or transgenderism has been discussed over and over again, a private organization should be able to fire and or hire whoever they want. You should have no say over that. When we're talking about culture, we're just talking about cancel culture, at least from my perspective. What we're talking about is if I get together with Triboulet and say, hey, we're not going to go in that grocery store, and then we tell a bunch of people like, hey, the guy running that grocery store has been using slanderous terms against African Americans, or has been, threatening violence against people of color. And so we're not going to shop there anymore. And then everybody in the community is like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. That'll show them, because we're not going to support those ideas by giving him money.
That's a great example. That's a great abstract example where everything lines up for you.
So
no one's lying.
Can you give me an example
coercing.
in which something has not been publicly discussed, or something that is not an open discussion,
what's been
where it's not
discussed.
a private?
Everyone discusses
Can I
things.
finish the statement real quick? Where it's
Sure.
not a public, or where it's not a private company, or even a university in which it's firing a single individual over comments that they've openly had discussions about many times before. Like, for
like
instance,
a biology
like
professor just teaching biology. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about here.
So by
not
teaching
picking any
biology,
example. It's
you
like-
mean
it's as
taking a
if you
stance on transgenderism?
No, it's as if
Because
you
those
don't
are two
live in the
different
same
things.
world.
Hey,
no,
so
so hold up real quick. It's as if we don't live in the same world. It's as if you don't see the same things that I see when it comes to Google employees being fired, professors,
I want to
in
talk about that.
university
I want to
being
talk about
fired,
that. So
scientists
you brought
on,
it. So you
on
brought up the Google
YouTube and on
employee again.
Twitter.
Hold
It's
on,
like
hold
you
on.
guys don't want to hear any of these examples.
No,
We're talking about the reality I'm talking
I want to
about.
get specific. I want to get
You're
specific.
talking about these crazy examples. I don't even know what
Hey,
you're talking about.
Hey, Morpheus, I just want to
Yeah.
tell us now. Okay, so 'cause
Sure.
you had talked about
You guys are
Google.
giving some crazy examples. I don't even know where these examples come from. You're talking about.
So all right, that's fine. Okay, so
We can't even.
you Morpheus, can we get a word in?
Yeah.
Jeez, man. Okay, so what I was saying, I was trying to get a good. I was trying to get a good description. How we. What happened?
Restart right there where you're just about to start.
Oh,
Sorry.
Okay, I was trying to get a good description of what you think counseling is, because because when we talk about
Cancel culture.
no, hold on. Yeah, I know
Sorry.
the word. So because you talked about Google firing an employee, and then this employee goes to start off his own software engineering company that's doing pretty well. Like, I don't see how that's being counseled. So,
Okay, well, do you want me to define it for you? Because I'll
Yeah.
just tell you what everyone that I know would think about it. If you just ask a general person on the street,
mhm.
hey, what do you think cancel culture? They're going to say, in general, it's a company, a university, a group of people in society that want to terminate or ruin someone's reputation or what have you because they have opposing views. That's
Sure,
my
so-
general definition.
cool,
And most people.
Cool. All right. So your definition in no way fits this Google example, because they just terminated him. Google didn't go out there
I just said
and try to defame his
corporation.
character. Like none of that happened. They just fired him.
No, I know.
So-
that was in my definition.
That's-
Terminate
that was-
them.
No, but you talk about ruining their character and their reputation. Like none of that happened. They just let him
So
go.
when
It was
a
private.
company
Nobody would have known.
fires you,
Nobody would.
and well, hold up. Let me just tell you why it's. I mean, when a company fires you, and it's a public. It's just because the company fires you and it's leaked out and people, it's in the media and things like that. Either way, the point is that someone, and this goes back to the original discussion.
Google made no effort to defame his character or ruin his reputation.
Doesn't matter. That's just one.
Okay,
that's just
but
one portion of the definition.
So this doesn't fit your.
It's just one. No, it literally go back to what I just said.
Okay, so
I stated three categories.
so anytime a company fires somebody for having some sort of view, that's being canceled. Is that what you're saying?
I would say that generally fits under cancel culture. Yeah, in my opinion.
Okay,
We're talking about things like. So let me just give you some
that
more
is a
examples.
weird.
It's not. So
description, but-
a company, a university, right? So we're looking at YouTube, Twitter, the university, Evergreen University. That's a great example. If you guys haven't heard that story, I highly recommend looking it up. But a situation where someone has a view or an opinion, and it's either stated via email or it's stated through just voicing the opinion, and there's retaliation for it.
I mean,
That's what we're talking. That's what I'm talking about. That's what most people care about. They don't care about these very specific, actually problematic situations.
Because so you can always bring up an example of where somebody went too far. Like, but that doesn't
That's
mean
what we care about.
That's
where you take the
you should care about more than that. Just like if we were having a discussion about whether or not we should allow guns, continuously bringing up examples of people being murdered by gun. It isn't very.
I'm just telling you, when you listen to conservatives on the issue,
okay, but
this is what they're upset about.
So do you understand the point that I was trying to make?
I understand the point you're trying to make, but do you understand the point that the conservatives are making?
Well,
because that's where the tolerance piece comes in, right? Well, it's about understanding each other,
and that's what I want to know. So you said,
and I'm trying to explain to you why they care about this stuff.
Okay, but you talked about understanding each other, right?
Yes, correct.
There are people out there who have like racist views. So it's not a matter of understanding. It's not even a matter of discourse, because racism. It's so funny
you say that. I grew up in some of the most liberal institutions in this country. I've lived in the most liberal parts of this country. I grew up in the Bible Belt. This racism that people talks about, this prejudice, these people that are extremely vocal in these racist opinions. I don't see these people. I don't know where they live.
That's fine. So just because
not
you
any
don't
institutions.
Okay, I don't see the moon right now. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So, but listen to the point I was trying to make.
It's just crazy to me that we bring these things up, but we ignore all the other stuff.
Cool, but just because you don't see something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Right? I don't see the moon. I don't see the back of my head. All right. So
we would think there'd be some anecdotal,
but it exists.
If it exists, why do people have to make up stories of it existing?
You keep cutting me off. Jeez, man. Okay, so for instance, right? So let's say like 50 years ago, right? And okay, like pre-civil rights era America, was there a lot of racism going on?
Pre-civil rights?
Yes.
Is that a real question?
No, it was a fake question.
Pre-civil rights.
Yes, that's a real question. I'm not going to waste time asking you fake questions. Yes, I'm telling you, before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Yes, so there was racism, right? Okay, now there's not. You know why? Because society decided they weren't going to tolerate racism.
That was back when racism's definition was actually coherent.
Okay, I don't know what definition of racism
they've changed
you're using.
Times.
Okay. I mean, sure. I don't.
You just go to a liberal university.
What I'm using when I use racism, I'm talking about judging someone by their race.
Okay, good. So that's something we agree on.
It's cool. So the reason that was done away.
Sometimes I don't know what definition people use.
Sure. Okay. So the reason that has greatly diminished is because society has decided that they're not willing to put up with that anymore.
Yeah, we had a war, we had policy, we had legislation, we had we had the cultural change. Those are all great things.
And so the policies were just a reaction of society.
Sure.
So it's because society decided they're not going to tolerate that. You're saying is, we should have just listened.
But yeah.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't.
Who was it if it wasn't society?
Anyways,
no, I'm saying half of society at one point.
So half of the other half of society was like what? Like,
would you say they were on the right side or on this?
They shouldn't tolerate racism.
No.
Okay, I'm just curious why you brought that up. Were you saying they're on the wrong side?
Absolutely not. And the fact that you guys. Okay, so let me just back up. My point is we have to be very careful about majority views anyway. So
I'm not talking about the majority. So here's the thing. This is what I was saying. So counseling, it will only work.
What my point was that
if the individual agrees. Okay. So if someone says they don't like you, if someone says they don't like Morefreeus anymore,
yeah, but you just ignored
because he's left-handed. Okay, hold on. Listen. So stop trying to provide objections before I make my argument, because you have no idea what I'm about to argue.
You just asked me. Prior to the Civil Rights Act, were people racist?
That was like 3 minutes ago.
I was society. I haven't even got to respond to that.
To be fair, you refused to respond to that, and then we said yes, there was, and now he's making a different point because you refused to say that before this civil rights movement there was racism in America.
Yeah, because
let's take a real honest step there. Let's just pause and take a real honest step.
I mean, if we can't agree on that, then we're really in trouble.
Okay, so now that we agree, we're going to talk about a different point, because Just like before the civil rights movement, there was racism, and now there's less racism because society did not tolerate it. That is the
but at one point,
exact point
society
that we're
did.
trying to make.
Yes, and
Yeah, but at one point society did.
At one point,
At one point society did,
and
but you would say
society-
that's a bad call.
It was
right?
society was much worse when we were tolerating it.
It's because there's it's because
we
there's patterns.
We discuss an idea, and then we say this idea is bad, so we're going to remove it. And if you want to keep that idea, we'll remove you too. So like it is social ostracizing. It is completely voluntary. We're not doing anything to you. We're just saying we're no longer going to support you.
You guys are only bringing up one case where this is positive. Of course it's positive.
I can bring
no one would disagree with that.
I can bring it to a bunch of cases, like the cases with homophobia. I mean, like, how many cases do you want?
Well, no, I'm saying that in general, groups of people.
I mean, the Holocaust.
Agree.
Okay, well, you said I was.
No,
going to
you
bring
guys
up
are.
one
You guys
case.
aren't even listening.
How
to
many
me.
cases do you want?
Can you guys just listen to the principle I'm talking about?
Okay.
Because you guys are bringing up Holocaust and like, of course, no one's going to disagree with that.
I mentioned it in passing because we were talking about another case in which society was on the wrong side of things for a while, and then let me just
make a general. Let me make a general statement for everyone listening. Groups of people, the majority, make good calls and make bad calls all the time, and we're talking about good calls that everyone agrees with. That's easy stuff. Okay, what we should be talking about is situations where society thinks they're making good calls, but they weren't. Just like everyone in Germany thought they were making a good call, supporting the what's it called? Democratic Socialist Party of Hitler, or the Third Reich. So the point I'm trying to make is
argument, but that's not an argument against cancel culture. You're saying, hey, you shouldn't have canceled this person.
So we're talking about a group of people. Let me hear me out.
But that's not an argument.
You guys have to hear the argument. We're talking about a group of people in society that believe they have the right idea on their side, and it ends up they're wrong. It happens. It's happened throughout history. So the point I'm trying to make is, if you go back and you point to a specific time where they got it right, that's great. Everyone agrees with you. Where we have to be careful is when we're wrong. And that happens.
Sure.
We were wrong before the civil rights movement.
I agree.
Nazi Germany was wrong. The socialists of Soviet Union were wrong. Pol Pot's, countrymen were wrong.
Whoa.
There are plenty of situations where
these are terrible examples, because these are instances when the government was forcing people to do stuff. That the alternative to that is cancel culture. If we were just using cancel culture, as in if it was just voluntary, you would have never had what happened in Germany. You would have never had.
Be careful of purely democratic processes. The Greeks surely were. That's why they didn't use a purely democratic
process is government. I'm not talking about democracy.
Not. That's one component of it.
Democracy is a form of government. People
it's one
vote.
Component.
People vote and use force against you. That is not what I'm talking about at all. So the examples you use, Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, that would happen through government. That would have never happened through cancel culture.
Some of those folks were elected, weren't they? They weren't elected by a bunch of people.
Listen, so in Germany, people gathered a bunch of Jews, homosexuals, and crippled people, 12 million people, and forced them into camp and murdered them. Okay.
Yeah, but there was precursors to that, right?
Council culture would have just said,
culture comes first.
Hold on, listen. Council culture would have said, you know what? I don't like you because you're Jewish or whatever, and so I'm no longer going to associate.
And
there would have been no harm.
You got to make the connections, my friend, because culture is not something that lives in a bubble. First, it starts out as culture.
You're jumping from council culture. You're jumping from council culture to government force, which is
because I think there's a connection there, and so we have to talk about first cancel culture, and we can talk about. We can talk about it in many different ways, right? When me and you first talked about having this conversation, in my brain, cancel culture was, in general, the idea of a group of people coming together, regardless if it was just citizens or if it was corporations.
Show me this connection between cancel culture and then using government force.
So
when we talk about using government force, So when we talk about using government force, I'm opposed. So I agree.
I can show you a connection.
Facade,
there's a lawsuit right now.
So I think Facade would agree too. Like, I think we're all opposed to just using force against people to promote some sort of idea.
So this is the general, like, if you wanted to see a workflow, right? If I created a workflow for this, it starts with like general consensus, and then cancel culture, and then somehow there's a connection between the cancel culture and, like, let's say, the institutions of power, like academia and corporate institutions, and then that leaks over into government. And there's a clear linear progression that you can see to an extent. There's a lawsuit right now because of specific government actions to Twitter people, or censor people through Twitter. That's a great example of those two, all those things. It's an overlap of those specific things. And to think that they're separate and there's a separate bubble of each one, they don't touch each other, is preposterous.
I didn't say they don't touch each other. So do you know what a slippery slope argument is?
Yes.
Okay, that's exactly what you're doing. You're saying A is wrong.
I'm taking all the variables into consideration.
No. Okay, sure.
I mean, you're almost taking all the variables into consideration. What if an asteroid comes and kills all the people that you dislike?
No, you guys can't just say that. Cancel culture.
I want to explain. I just want to explain your fallacious reasoning. You're saying A is wrong because it leads to B, which is definitely wrong. So if you can have A without B, there's tons of people. I didn't say that. No. There's tons of people who have been counseled without the government taking action. So that's what
I'm okay with that.
Well,
so I think
that is cancel culture. But you're talking about using the government for that. That's what I was when you brought up the Nazis and the communists in the Soviet Union. This is total straw man, because I said from the beginning I'm totally opposed to using force.
And I said in the beginning I'm generally opposed. And so you're a straw man too. Again, we get
no. I'm not straw manning. You're the one that brought up. No, you're the one that brought up government force. I was only talking about voluntary ostracism, and then you brought up government.
Okay, well, that's just us misunderstanding each other. That's it.
I'm not. No. We're not misunderstanding each other.
Yes, we are.
You were straw manning. And
I was not straw manning.
You were committing two different fallacies. I can point out to you. You were straw manning because you were talking about government.
If you want to limit the conversation, again, I gave you my definition. If you go back 20 minutes, you'll hear it, and I included government and corporation. So if you want to go back to the beginning and we want to redefine this and say we're only talking about private citizens having an opinion on a certain person's or businesses or whatever.
That's what cancel culture is.
Not everyone believes that, because I'm part of everyone else who thinks that there's more than just private citizens involved in this. I don't care about private citizens' opinions necessarily. I care about, I mean, to a certain degree, we have to care, right? But mostly it's when you get a situation where a person is, fired or relieved of their tenure, or they, there's some kind of public defamation.
It kind of seems to me like you're using like really nuanced examples of private organizations firing people and then referring to that as cancel culture.
And Nazis, which has nothing to do with cancel culture.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact,
tell you why I brought it up.
Most Germans disagreed with what Hitler was doing. So Jews weren't even canceled.
Yeah, I mean, the problem is when you like force an organization or the government to get involved, it then leads to a forceful overthrow, or steps in which the government then we're just going to war over this kind of stuff.
So I guess I wasn't taught that there was an anti-Semitic culture in Germany, which led to Hitler's rise through his election.
I didn't say that. What I said was
that's cultural values and views.
I didn't say that, sir. There's an anti-Semitic culture in America. That doesn't mean that America is anti-Semitic. The vast majority of Americans don't have problems with Jews.
But there was a specific argument we were talking about. That's why I brought it up. But if you want to go back to the original argument,
so my specific argument was the vast majority of people in Germany opposed what Hitler was doing to Jewish people. So what Hitler did was not a product of cancel culture. And you replied that, and then you said that there was like some sort of anti-Semitic. Say it again. You talked about whether there was some sort of anti-Semitic.
No. So the reason why I brought up that specific example is because we were talking about, you had brought up how there was basically racism prior to the Civil Rights Act, and then you said culture.
Okay, enough with the meta. Okay, let's start with the medical.
But I'll just give you an example of why I brought it up. If you don't understand why I brought it up, then it makes no sense. So
why you're telling me why you brought up? You're telling me why you brought up the thing about Germany?
the point I was making, which was in response to the point you were making, was that whenever we look to groups of people making progress, you can look at groups of people that aren't making progress. In other words, groups of people aren't always right. So if your principle
I'm
is
not saying
let's
that.
take groups of people that are trying to cancel people, I don't think it's a good
So
principle.
is your concern that by canceling someone, or however you want to call it, because you have a pretty niche definition there, but
Most
by
people would
canceling
not say
someone,
it's niche.
that they've made the wrong decision?
No, I'll state my original statement, which everyone can go back and listen, that I'm actually stating the exact same thing. In general, we should not default on cancel. We should default on tolerance, and canceling is for
Okay,
outliers to that.
Should you tolerate Klansmen and their
That's an
ideals?
outlier. It's an outlier.
Should you tolerate people that promote racism?
That's another outlier.
There's a hell of a lot of outliers, man.
Should you
not.
tolerate people that are anti?
It also depends on what you define as racism.
Should you tolerate people that are anti-homosexual?
Depends. Like Chick-fil-A, for instance, is a good example of
Yeah,
we should
exactly.
have tolerance
Should
for
you
them.
tolerate people like Chick-fil-A?
Yeah,
Like the owner
tolerance.
of Chick-fil-A?
Yeah.
So
yes, I think in general most.
What do
things
you?
should be
So what
tolerated.
do you mean by tolerance? Are you asking? Are you, for example,
I'm saying
let's
that
say
our default should be.
Let's say hold on. Let's say that I decide I'm no longer going to eat at Chick-fil-A because of their views on homosexuality.
Mhm.
Am I being tolerant?
Yes, because you're not going to as far as to defame or
okay. So what if I tell
ruin their
Facade?
reputation?
So what if I tell Facade, hey, Chick-fil-A is opposed to homosexuals. Let's not eat at Chick-fil-A anymore. Now, am I wrong?
In my opinion, you should be tolerant towards everyone's views.
Okay, but that's not what I was asking. Sure, we agree.
But that's just what I believe.
But I'm trying to figure out what you mean on tolerance. I'm trying to find a definition, right? Because if I decide that I don't go to Chick-fil-A because they're homophobic, you said that's tolerant. Now I'm asking, if I ask Facade, I told Facade, hey, they're homophobic. Let's not eat at Chick-fil-A anymore. Am I still being tolerant?
In that situation, you're attempting to deprive them of your resources.
Of what resources?
That's not tolerant. Your resources, like your money towards their product.
Well, he already said he wasn't going to go there anymore, so he already did that.
And they don't have a right to my resources, by the way.
They sure do not. There's nothing.
They
that
don't.
Gives them
They
that
don't.
right.
They don't have a right to your resources. But I think that if we, I mean, do I think that we should deprive everyone of their own ability to?
That's not what I asked.
That's not what I
asked. I'm trying to figure out. Okay, look, I'm getting somewhere. I'm trying to understand what you mean by tolerance, because it is very nebulous.
So there's a difference between having the right to do something and me believing that they should be tolerant. There's a difference there.
Sure, right.
So I believe that.
But what I'm asking. So I tell Facade, let's not go to Chick-fil-A anymore because they're homophobic. Are we being tolerant?
Let me think. That's kind of I would say that's completely fine. You don't have to go eat at Chick-fil-A.
If I tell somebody now I get involved and I say, hey, buddy down the street Joe, buddy down the street Jack, buddy down the street Jeff, all three of you, never eat we're not going to eat at Chick-fil-A anymore because they're homophobic. And I feel like by not supporting them, it will show that we are against their homophobic nature. Am I now still being tolerant?
It's hard for me to say this because on one hand, let me tell you what I'm thinking in my head. On one hand, I believe that you should be able to do that, right? Like you should have the right to not go to Chick-fil-A and eat there. On the other hand,
right, I should have a right to
of course. But
I should have the right to not eat anywhere I want.
Of course.
Yeah.
But let me just tell you what.
Should I also have the right to be able to tell my friends my opinion on something?
Yes, of course. But let me tell you what's in my brain. Of course. On one hand, you obviously should have the right to not go eat there for whatever reason you have. On the other hand, in my brain, I'm like, why can't we be tolerant of other people's views? Right?
So what do you mean by
like,
tolerant?
That's
what I'm trying to figure out.
By being tolerant, do you mean that I should still go buy their food even though they're homophobic?
What I mean is like, okay, like they have religious views. Everyone has religious views. Not everyone, but people who are religious, right? Religions have religious views. And if they're not going out and freaking just having an opinion, right? And I mean, it's one of those situations where like I'm kind of on the fence because like I get people don't want to eat Chick-fil-A because of the fact that the owners are Christian, they're closed on Sunday, and they have religious views. And I wouldn't, like I said, I believe people should have the right to do that. On the same hand, principally speaking, our general disposition, in my opinion, should be let's tolerate people's views, debate them, have discourse, have what have you. But at the same time,
so that's being done. So we've debated whether or not you should be homophobic. So
yeah, I mean, like let's take it to
I think
kind
it
of a
depends
more
on what you're
extreme
talking
example.
about.
Let's say hypothetically, there's a Brazilian restaurant that was founded in the rainforest tribes, and the people of this rainforest tribes think that it's okay to sacrifice their firstborn child. Okay, now this restaurant has got some really good food. I'm talking about some of the best food you've ever eaten, but they're promoting their religion by saying we're going to sacrifice our firstborn child, and you should too, because I run this company and I make really good food. You should listen to us and what we say. Do I have any obligation to provide them funds out of my pocket if I disagree with their notion of sacrificing a child?
No.
Okay, and I can tell people how I feel about that because I have a right to my own opinion.
Correct.
And I can tell Triboulet, and I can tell all my friends about it. I could even go on social media if I wanted to and say, hey, this restaurant founded by these people, they have the notion that sacrificing your firstborn child is a good thing. And I disagree with that.
Sure. No,
and if all the people that are on my social media agree with me and we no longer go to that restaurant, we still all have that right. Is that correct?
Of course.
That's cancel culture.
That's exactly what it is. Because this is why I was really confused, because I gave an example of cancel culture being enacted on an individual level, and then you have I guess the culture, which is the conglomeration of it happening with a bunch of individuals, and then you seem to be opposed to it.
I think that in general, the issue that people like me and other folks that tend to be conservative have is when those individuals having that opinion and that culture of opinions bleeds over, like I said, into the institutions of power, like corporations, academia, and in government. And that's where, again, if you go back and listen to my definition probably 30 minutes ago at this point, that's where it becomes problematic. At the individual level, you can demonstrate how that's not an issue. But when people are, and I don't think most reasonable people obviously wouldn't have an issue with that. I think even like the most conservative people, if you talk to them, of course they wouldn't have an issue, especially if they're libertarian. But when you get to the point where it's like you could lose your job, right? Or you could.
Well, which the Chick-fil-A could they would lose their job if people stop eating there.
Yeah, but it's a little bit different though. I mean,
what's the difference?
If everyone stops, because there's
Chick-fil-A losing their job because of people
they could
not
go
eating
out of
their
business, right?
Yeah, and also the employees.
True, and that goes back to like the idea of like,
but that's different.
Well, no, I was just going to say it goes back to the idea of having like not wanting to serve gay people, for instance, or having very specific religious reasons for certain things. In your business, you wouldn't make it in most places. You would, you wouldn't survive. You'd have to go to your specific little pocket. But I think if you want to know why there's a general concern. If you want to know why there's a general concern, it's the concern that I'm voicing, which is that cultural opinion bleeds into other areas. And the other question is like, is it wrong to have the belief that your marriage should be between a man and a woman? Like that's their religious belief. I even though I don't believe that, and I am, and I advocate for gay rights, and I believe love can be between any two people, I still have to take into consideration that there's people who have religious beliefs, and if we believe in freedom of religious belief and freedom to to
council culture has nothing to do with
exercise their religion.
You're
It
bringing
bleeds
in
over.
it doesn't. You're talking about government, and so that's where we already draw the line. Saying that it bleeds over, like
But
I mean that's just a slippery slope fallacy.
It's not
like,
a slippery slope.
It is.
Most people,
because you're saying we shouldn't counsel somebody because counseling could lead to government force. I can do the same thing. Don't get angry because anger can lead to murder.
No. Well, let me say that. Let me make a statement. So for everyone who's listening, if you are specifically only isolating it to just individual citizens within the country, right? Not wanting to do something, I'm 100% okay with that. I don't have an issue with that. And so, and if you would have asked me from like before we had this conversation, what's your opinion on individual citizens not doing something, you know, in that basically being defined.
I mean, that's what count. They're all individuals. Everybody that takes part in council culture is an individual.
But I don't have an issue with that. I have an issue when it becomes a university, when it comes a corporation, and when it comes government. Those three, and that's where we really see the issues, right?
So government,
because if you can't have, if
we
you
don't
can't
even
have
need
an
to go to
opposing
government.
view in academia, if you can't have an opposing view in academia, and you're getting rushed off of campus because you just state a biological fact, that's where, to me, that's where it becomes problematic. Because like I agree with you on one hand that we should be able to voice our opinions and as a community come together and not support a business or what have you for whatever reason. But when it ends up being in an institution like a university or a corporation like Google or Twitter, that's where everyone is worried about. So if you want to talk about, if you were to go grab a random conservative and you said,
but why couldn't it be a corporation? No, why couldn't it be a corporation? Because a corporation is just owned by individuals.
It can be. I'm saying that the principle, in my opinion, is that it shouldn't be.
Okay, but what I'm asking you, like, why don't you think it shouldn't be? Because the corporation is just owned by individuals. Like, because for instance, like you decided,
there's too many, because we have a multicultural and diverse country, and we're gonna have pockets of people with different opinions. That's the whole point.
Whether in multicultural or not, you're gonna have people with different opinions. Totally,
it doesn't matter if you're Muslim, if you're LGBT, if you're Marxist. We all have different opinions. So we have to be, principally speaking, in order for us to function, we have to have tolerance.
Okay, so council culture is when we're saying when council culture is being intolerant, is what they're using is voluntary disassociation. They're not attacking people. If that's going on, I'm totally against that. Throw them in jail. If the government is trying to force someone to change their opinion, yeah, I'm totally against that.
Academia.
Well, we mean if academia.
Those are the three. I mean, we're talking about institutions of power.
Okay, I mean
universities.
So what about it? So if a private university decide that they don't want to, not public, that's government. No, hold on. Public, that's government. So that's why I don't want to go there. So if a private university decides that they don't want to promote
in my category, government's involved because they are involved. So that you can't just exclude one of the institutions of power.
That's what I'm saying. Like I can't exclude them because I'm saying I don't support that example. So in that instance, there's not council culture. It's just violence.
But that's how you're defining it.
Because
that's your definition. That's not my definition. It's
not my definition. If you look,
that is your definition.
If you just Google, no.
If you just listen, if you listen to anyone talking about the subject, they're going to bring up Twitter. They're going to bring up the government forcing Twitter to censor people.
If you just Google the definition of council culture, like it'll show you that it's social ostracism.
What's the 2022 public forum in social media where people go to debate in discourse? What's the forum? I don't know. It's Twitter. That's your answer. It's Twitter. In 2022,
so
2020, 2019, Twitter is the public forum.
We're everywhere.
No. I don't want to talk about the real.
No, well, you say
it's so funny. It's so funny because whenever we get to the actual central argument, which is the public square, public discourse.
Hold
the that it's a corporation, the fact that there's legislation in place right now, or lawsuit in place right now because the government was involved in actively
Morefreeus, I'm not
censoring
trying
a
to
specific
obfuscate.
person.
No, Morefreus, not trying to obfuscate.
Well, then let's talk about it.
Okay, no. But no,
let's talk about it.
I think you're being a little careless. You're being careless with your language because you said public
I've
university.
been
No, you're not. Because I said public university, and then you talked about Twitter being a public forum. When I said public, no. So you're equivocating because you're using public in two different ways. I don't mean public as in open to everybody. And when I said public university, I meant it was funded by the government.
I know what you mean.
Okay, so
I know the difference.
Okay, well, so when we jump from public universities and you started talking about Twitter, this is totally
it's a private
different.
corporation.
If Twitter wants to cancel somebody, that's cool. If we're talking about a public university that is just the government, that's totally different.
Yeah, but I'm talking about gray areas that are complicated. And so here's the funny thing.
What I care about, I'm trying to get to. We got to be precise with our language.
I'm very precise.
You're not, because it led to confusion. Because
let me define it.
You equivocated on the word public, and it totally threw me off. Because I was talking about a public university.
I understand everyone knows that there's public universities, private universities, has to do with funding, where you get it, whether government or private. Also, everyone knows that Twitter is a private company that's also a public forum for debate. The public goes onto Twitter and debates. Now, we all know
individuals, which
of course.
Yes.
But they utilize a private company to state their opinion.
Yes, there you go. And most people would call it the modern day public square for discourse.
Well, they call the internet that. They don't call Twitter
they call Twitter that. You can find articles on it. Modern day public square for discourse. I bet you there's
plenty of articles that call it that. I mean, but for the sake
of but I'm just saying, can we not just disagree is like in general, like common sense?
I'm going to say it's undoubtedly not the most common because it's not even the most used social platform. So people are definitely going to have more opinions on something on a platform that has more users.
People in general, like everyone knows, if you want to debate something, you go to Twitter. Actually, now people tend to do lives on TikTok to debate. But the point is, we're getting kind of away from the subject. The point I was trying to make is, for me, you cannot ignore the institutions of power when you're talking about cancel culture, because that's where everyone cares.
Cool.
No one cares if you don't go to Chick-fil-A and eat a chicken sandwich. People care about the institutions of power that are exercising their ability to fire people because of their views. And that is what people believe is cancel culture.
Don't you think that a private company should be able to hire and or fire anyone they want for any reason they desire? If a private company cannot fire you for any reason you desire,
they can't. No.
Why not?
Because that would be like, if they don't hire, like if they wanted to fire you because you're black, for instance, like that would be illegal.
If a private company wanted to do that, what's wrong with it?
It's discriminatory.
Okay.
I mean,
and it's a private company.
So what's wrong with the discrimination?
What's wrong with a private company? If I own a mom and pop grocery store,
that's the reason why
I don't want to hire a single black person in the grocery store. I don't have to.
That's against the law. There's been laws put in place. The point I'm trying to make is that
I don't want to go
again. It's not every single.
We're getting a little off topic with the
no. This is the good stuff. I mean, literally, this is the stuff people care about. Like if you go grab 5 random conservatives, when you talk about cancel culture, they're gonna bring up Twitter. They're gonna bring up the government.
I don't know why
you're gonna bring up.
It doesn't matter. Like, get back to the point, bro.
That is the point.
Okay, so great. The whole point you just made. Stop. The point you just made was if you grab 5 random conservatives, they'll bring up Twitter and cancel culture. Great. Now let's get back to cancel culture itself, not what 5 conservatives think cancel culture is.
Why does their opinion not matter? That's what this is the debate.
Why does my opinion not matter when I say I'm going to ban Chick-fil-A?
It does because most people agree with you.
It's the same thing, right?
It's not. No.
I have an opinion that I want to ban Chick-fil-A. A conservative has an opinion that Twitter's a public forum. What's the difference?
I didn't say those two things.
You said those two things.
I said.
Would you like me to go back and play it for you?
No, you're right.
Don't make me do it.
I did.
Hold on.
You're right. I did.
I want to kind of slow up this up for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say So I hope we can all agree that there's a bunch of views that people have that society would be better off without. So okay, so let's say somebody who owns a business, or there's somebody with that view, right? How do we what do we do about that? And let's say discussion just didn't work. Let's say for instance, Chick-fil-A says they hate gay people. Not just they're opposed to gay marriage, but they hate gay people, right? What does society do?
Your argument is not the issue with what you bring up is that your argument is out of context. Everyone in the country
The context.
No, we're not.
Chick-fil-A,
No one's arguing about that. No one's arguing if a company says
it's an analogy.
Yeah, and you're using an analogy that is not parallel to the reality that we live in right now. People aren't doing that. What people are doing and what people are upset about is when a Google employee is fired for saying that there's a difference between men and women, when a scientist is censored by the government through Twitter, and there's a lawsuit in place.
Okay, so that's not cancel culture. Okay, being censored by the government.
That's what everyone is saying. Cancel culture is. So if you want to
change, they're wrong.
If you want to change the definition, you can.
No. You were really big into like definitions pulled from the internet.
No, I'm just saying, generally speaking.
But you
just like I said,
past few episodes,
speaking,
that's what you've been really big into. So just
generally speaking, men and women are defined as male and female.
Oh no, stop. I don't want to go back to that. Okay. But just look at the definition. Just look at a definition of cancel culture and see if the government censoring somebody is that. See if that's.
I'll look that up. Sure, I'll look it up right now. I've never looked that up, to be honest.
That's a violation of the First Amendment. Because
I agree. That's why there's a lawsuit in place.
Well, because you had earlier, I wanted to get to this, but you have kept going because you had brought up free speech and exercise of religion, and those are rights that the government can't interfere with. But that's not the same thing as saying that I will refuse to associate with you because you have the belief. There's a huge difference from saying I will not associate with a Muslim and the government saying you can't be Muslim. There's just a huge difference. And saying that one could lead to the other is not an argument against cancel culture. Saying that the A, not associating with a Muslim, could lead to B, killing Muslims, is not an argument against A. That's a slippery slope argument. The structure of your argument is fallacious. This is what I'm saying. So it is the non sequitur.
Okay. So in the way that you just define cancel culture, we agree.
Social ostracism.
Yeah, we agree there. There's not, and if you would have asked me that from the beginning when we talked, I wouldn't have disagreed with you.
So you're opposed to the government jumping in.
I'm opposed to 3 institutions of power specifically.
Okay,
and that is corporations, academia,
and
the government.
It's a corporation. I'm talking about government. So a corporation wouldn't have the right to outlaw Islam.
Yeah, but we're not talking about rights. We're talking about my opinion on whether something's good or bad.
Sure. Okay. So again,
regardless of something having
a corporation,
though. Like,
what's
the difference in me having an opinion on someone who is homophobic and a corporation having an opinion on someone who's homophobic?
Well, the corporation is employing people and basically providing.
They say you have to follow these guidelines and restrictions, right?
Sure, and there's also cultural
they have
rules.
These viewpoints. You don't have to work there. Ain't no one forcing
you. Don't have to. Yeah, no, I agree.
So you're there on a voluntary basis. Well, not really. You're there to get paid, but it's a voluntary payment. It's not like you're a slave, right?
Of course.
Okay, so the government,
but my opinion,
they make a law, right? And that law you have to follow if you live under that government.
Not necessarily. Sometimes the government gets involved. Like I said, with the lawsuit that's currently undergoing with Twitter, where they go.
The law in general that's causing that lawsuit, right? Like if the government wasn't involved,
exactly.
It would just be between
the
two
law,
people, right? So what's
the
difference
allows
in me having an opinion and Twitter now owner Elon Musk his opinion? What's the difference in my opinion and Elon Musk's opinion? Nothing other than Elon Musk can put his opinion out to way more people than I can. So if you want to work for Elon Musk and Twitter, and he has
Yeah,
these
I mean,
opinions,
if
you just know what you're going into when you work there. And if you disagree with those, you don't have to work there. And by the way, if Elon Musk disagrees with you and he owns the company, he could fire you.
yeah, I think there's
And there's
we could,
no need for the government to get involved.
so well, sometimes, right? Like there's certain things he couldn't fire you for. But let me
Well,
say
I'm saying
this:
the reason
we could have
if
a.
he fires you for those reasons because the government
It
and the
depends on
government
the
has to get
reason.
involved
Why?
is because
It
of
depends on why he's
previous
firing you.
times in which we thought it was a bad idea. For instance, like if he fires you because
That's why intention matters.
racism,
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
because
there's
the government, went through the Civil Rights Acts, and we decided that maybe that people of all colors should have rights.
no, I agree.
You know what I'm saying?
But
Like
I think
the
that,
government didn't
yeah,
need that to actually have rights for humans.
but I think that we can have a debate on policy and law, and we can have a debate on preference. And my preference in terms of cancel culture is that, in general, I think that people should be principled in tolerance, and not in terms of intolerance. And even though my definition is a little bit more expanded than what was put forward, I think that
your definition doesn't match like anything that I can find about cancel culture. Like cancel culture is strictly social ostracization. That is it. It doesn't involve the government forcing people to do things.
But normatively speaking, many people have my definition in their brain, whether or not they went to Google.
You're the first person I've ever met. So like I don't know how normative it is.
If I had 3 people on here that had my viewpoint, they'd all have my viewpoint. I mean, there's plenty of people that have it.
They be wrong because in instances when cancel culture is described, it's not the government doing things. Like so, even so, when every example. So when I asked from the beginning, like because for example,
I can show you episodes of Bill Maher. He's about as mainstream liberal as it comes, and he's using my definition. Or is Bill Maher not mainstream?
He's talking about the government,
Twitter, and the government, and universities.
So it is. So you're saying Bill Maher said that
when Bill Maher commentates, when he does his dialogue, when you can find clips of him,
culture includes the government because the government doesn't counsel people. The government uses
the force. So there are. And it's funny, I have to bring up Bill Maher or like, any other mainstream news outlet that talks about cancel culture, because one of the things they bring up is obviously Twitter or Google, right? So again, my definition is expanded to those 3 institutions of power, and most people use those in terms of their conversation, their normal conversations about cancel culture. No one's ever and this is what's funny is like this is the first conversation I've had where we've been so specific with our definition that it's only private citizens and not expanded to anything else.
That might be the problem because
I'm not saying
I don't want to be
like
super ambiguous of words, like just like the way you were using public earlier. So because
no, I was using it in 2 different ways, right?
Okay, well, while you were talking with Facade, I couldn't find anything on the internet that says remotely close to what you're saying. Like it's completely societal. It's communities. It's not so. For instance, like the Holocaust.
What are we debating?
That wasn't
a definition
government.
On the internet, and this is something you used to me as a counter argument in the first episode.
Sure.
What are we debating? Are we debating the definition on Wikipedia? Or are we debating the normal or the normative definition that you see on nighttime or Bill Maher? I mean, that's here's the thing.
Yeah. So here's the thing. Like I can't find anyone that agrees with you on that. So like I'm not using a Wikipedia definition. I've just been going through websites because it seems like you're saying that you're opposed to cancel culture because
here's what happens.
Because you talk about the Soviet Union and stuff like that, right?
Well, no, I'll tell you an example.
Okay, really. So how about this?
This is an example Bill Maher brought up.
Okay,
a bunch of people are outraged about something, and that outrage ends up in the firing or the terminating of someone. There you go. There's a linkage. Isn't that crazy? That culture could somehow force a corporation into doing something.
Okay, that's not government. That's not government. That's not all.
That's not a government example. Of course, it's not.
Wait, that's what I was asking.
You want an example government?
So that's.
Would you like one? Okay.
I
then
was
won't give
asking
one.
you if Bill Maher had
can
given
give you
an
an
example of that, and do an example of Bill Maher's explanation. It didn't involve the
So I'll
government.
give you. So I'll give you an example. Joe
So
Rogan, one of the largest podcasts in the world, and
yeah,
there was a 3-hour conversation about someone who's actively pursuing a lawsuit because he found evidence that the government was using Twitter to censor him. There's an example. Why do we not care about that? And that's what's
that's
interesting to
not
me.
council, because that's the government.
It's not. It starts with the
The
people.
community didn't get
Oh,
together
So
and
you
decide
you
to
don't
ostracize
want
him. You
to
shouldn't
you don't want
government.
to make the
does
linkage.
Twitter not have the right to
You
censor who they
don't
want?
want to make the linkage. There's a link.
Does
I
Twitter
didn't
not
say
have the
I
right
didn't
to
want to
censor
make
who
the
they
linkage.
want?
Say that again.
Does Twitter not have the right to censor who they want?
They do. Yeah, they can't do it with the government's direction. That's the problem. That's the
I
lawsuit.
mean, can you say
Yeah,
that the government directed someone to can you give me any example in which someone was
Yes,
directed
that's
by
the lawsuit
government?
I'm talking about.
Okay,
Literally, there
can
was
you-
a person
can-
in
can
the
you
government.
Can you name the lawsuit, the article, the title, or anything like that? The person involved. Can I Google
Yeah,
this person versus
I'll give you.
U.S.
Give me one
government?
second. Give me 1 second. I'll give it to you, and you can.
I'd
So-
be
Everyone can
really
fact check
interested.
okay,
it.
so
Yeah, give me 1 second. Let me look it up.
okay, sure. Well, that's why I really wanted to shut off the government part, because it seemed like we both agreed.
Well, no, what I'm saying is,
So, but
if you limit it, listen, hear me out, man, please. I'm being consistent. I promise. If you limited it to just citizens, my agreement was in what's right and wrong, right? Like what you were saying. I agree with you. You cannot spend money at Chick-fil-A. I agree with you that it's right that you can get with a group of people and not go to a place. But what I'm saying is that, given the expanded definition that myself and I assume that most people had,
because your expanded definition includes the Holocaust. So of course it's
no,
wrong.
I was giving
If cancel
you
culture
example of a
means Holocaust,
situation.
if the cancel culture includes the Holocaust, then sure, cancel culture
No,
is
I was
wrong.
giving an
Just like
example
if
of,
words include murder,
that's not my argument.
then words would be wrong. I mean,
That's anyone. No, that's not my argument. I was giving an example of where the majority of a population that elected someone on a false pretense, essentially a false belief that Jews were the problem with the German society at the time. There's examples where the groups of people that we think have the right idea, there's examples where they don't have the right idea, which is why we have to be very careful.
That's what I'm saying.
So the majority is already right. The majority is always right.
No,
Exactly.
now
That's
you're just
my
not
point.
listening. I was just pointing out I said there's a fallacy in your argument, and then you said,
What's the
so
fallacy?
that means the majority is always right.
No, I was
No,
giving you
that
an
is
example
not
where the
what that
majority
means.
wasn't right.
No, so
Can we all agree that the majority shouldn't have elected Hitler on the basis that Jews were an issue with society?
I'd wager
Yes.
neo-Nazis don't
Yes, that has
agree with but
nothing
that
to do with
doesn't
cancel
mean
culture.
anything.
So here I can explain the fallacy.
Is there any
in your
case where? Okay, go.
So your the argument was a slippery slope. What I was saying earlier, how it just because A leads to B and B is wrong, that doesn't make A wrong. So just because individuals have or counseling something, and that could lead to government.
Yeah, let me tell you why you're wrong.
Force against people, that doesn't mean that the individuals counseling someone is wrong. That's a slippery slope.
So you know what's funny about you saying that? But you know what's funny?
I want to.
What's funny?
I don't think
you
understand.
I just agreed with you. Did I not?
You agree with me that you're wrong?
No. If you go back 10 minutes
ago.
Okay,
well then you don't agree with me.
No. It's not slippery slope because I agreed with your first point. I didn't say you were wrong. I said if cancel culture is a matter of individual citizens coming together and canceling, then I agree with you. So it's not a slippery slope. What I'm saying is that if you expand culture,
even with the Google example, there was just a collective of individuals firing that guy.
No, it was a collective group of people that raised enough
individuals
outrage, so that a corporation fired the person.
Cool. So
and also you can do that with universities.
Pause. Both of you pause. So what you're saying is that individuals had an opinion and a company did something about it.
Yeah, and the individual's opinion wasn't right.
Okay, but
that's the problem.
You would say
it's not always right. You're making an assumption that it is.
Right or wrong, right? It
does matter. That's a big. That's a big deal.
I'm not asking whether it was right or wrong. I'm asking individuals had an opinion on a notion, right?
Correct.
That's
Just like
irrelevant.
racists used to have.
Right. Just like racists used to have, and just like anti-racists used to have, just like I have an opinion on the color
Exactly.
blue.
That's why there's a
Right.
principle not to
Right. There's
always
a. But pause.
believe
Just
the
let me
group.
finish. Just let me finish. People had an opinion on something,
Correct.
and it meant so much to an organization or this company, for instance, Google, in this exact example, thought that it was such a prevalent opinion of so many people that they didn't want to take the risk of keeping that person on their staff. And so the individuals at Google decided to fire another individual. This private organization and company, Google, fired someone at their leisure, which they had the right to do, because people had an opinion on that individual or on that stance that this individual took. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so what's the problem with any of that happening? A private company run by private individuals fired a private person because of their public opinion, in which other people, private individuals, made their public opinion in opposition to. So if I took a stance on racism on the hardcore side of I'm a racist and I work for a company, a public company, or well, not a public company, a private company, and that company fires me because of my stance on racism, because it's pretty well accepted that racism is bad in modernity, you would think that's wrong?
I'll give you an example.
But you think I've been canceled?
What if your opinion was on the white guilt sessions that Oprah was having?
I mean, it doesn't.
What if your opinion was
It's
on?
not really relevant
Okay,
to
the opinion
what
is
if your
irrelevant.
It
opinion-
doesn't matter.
what-
The opinion.
Opinion is irrelevant.
What if your opinion
Let's
was
say
on?
my opinion is that
white fragility?
Rubber ducks.
Just
if your-
say A. Hey, the opinion is A. His opinion
Yeah,
is
the reason
A.
why
Okay,
you're
put whatever
missing
you
this
want there.
detail. Let me just explain why, because I bet people listening are like, "Why is he saying that?" Because what if the person's opinion isn't wrong?
Okay,
You're the one arguing.
Can you
Hold
give
on.
an
It doesn't
example?
You just talked for
Can you
5
give-
minutes.
can you
Please
give an example?
let me rebut your statement. You just gave an example of a person saying something that was quote unquote racist. Let's just say it is. And the issue is that if we take a principle, which is something that you generally practice or put in place, what I'm saying is, what do you do about the situations where the person that said the thing is saying something that's not bad or not harmful? Who cares? Just cancel them?
I mean,
It seems like you're mad because people are taking consequences for having beliefs that you agree with. So
No, absolutely not. I'm having my issue is when someone has an opinion.
I mean, so for instance,
that's
can
not.
you give me an example of someone being canceled because of something you agree with?
Yeah, there's differences between men and women.
Oh, okay, so somebody was canceled.
Or
for that.
how about
Who was
this
that
one?
person?
Or the fact that there's side effects to the vaccine that are negative.
Okay,
myocarditis
who was
specifically.
that? Was that Alex Berenson? Is that who you're referring to?
Let me
And
look.
the Biden administration?
No.
So I have a really strong opinion on that.
Well, the
Perhaps it's that
vaccine.
you haven't done any research.
Yeah, the doctor who had claimed that he had worked on that the MRN or R1 MR.
It's not about research. I have a bad memory when
the
it
guy
comes
who
to
claimed that he
names.
had worked on the COVID vaccine, he was just outright lying. And he wasn't canceled.
No,
It
not
was just
that person.
a bunch of.
Are you talking
So-
about Alex Berenson, the guy who claimed that the Biden administration pressured Twitter to keep him off because he had a anti-vax stance?
That sounds like what I'm talking about.
Sounds more like the one that you're probably trying to refer to. You're aware that there is literally no ties between the government doing anything and Twitter temporarily banning his account, right? There's genuinely none. He's trying to make a lawsuit happen, and 60 lawyers have already refused his case because there's literally zero ties. There's not even good evidence that Joe Biden or anything Joe Biden's related to had anything to do with talking to Twitter at the time.
It was a series. So he basically the first lawsuit he did, he won that lawsuit and he got basically a bunch of information from, I believe it was from Twitter and from the government. It was
from the government because the government's not involved.
Well, no, it was because it was communication. It was
The
email.
government's clearly not involved. They haven't been involved.
So
Okay, well, the
after
person
like
who's
2
actually
minutes,
filed the lawsuit.
after 2 minutes,
Um,
I want to give
yeah.
Morpheus the last word
Alright,
because
yeah,
But basically, what happened was is the information he got was correspondence between the government and Twitter, and in those emails, which came from a conference that happened between Twitter and the government, it was basically there was an innuendo or an insinuation to basically censor him. But regardless of his case, I mean, there's plenty of cases documented on Twitter and on YouTube where scientists, literally people who have degrees in the fields where you would want them to commentate on mRNA and RNA technology and vaccines, were censored. That's a known thing. It's not a conspiracy. It's literally
censored
just
is not being canceled.
Right.
They're just censoring.
So
that
some people-
one.
some people were
Getting fired
canceled.
Isn't being canceled. Having
So-
people that
some
have an
people-
opposing opinion to you is not getting canceled.
So in my opinion, canceled means you get shut up. Like shut up, don't talk anymore. That's canceled.
Guess what? Those people can still discuss anything they want to discuss.
They can.
No,
It's
they
just-
can't on the public
like,
forums
so-
that matter the most. So
No,
YouTube and there was
just those
people whose
specific
channels.
things.
There's
So-
people whose
so-
channels
okay,
were.
here's
Why do you
I-
guys not care about people's channels
How about
being
no,
like
no, no,
deleted?
no. Let's a doctor,
and
a
blocked?
doctor, okay, a
Again,
doctor who's
Twitter can do whatever they
hold
want.
up, guys. Look, a doctor
Yeah,
who
and
says,
I don't think it's right.
hey guys, like a doctor
You don't
who
think it's
starts.
right that Twitter can do whatever they want?
I don't think they should be able to discriminate against black people, for instance. I think that's
So,
wrong.
No, okay.
If Twitter
You want them to
set
be able
up
to
a
do that?
platform
You said
so
do
they
whatever
can-
they want.
No, like I
allowed
don't want
anyone
to
So
go
do
there.
it's
in
okay to
reason.
discriminate sometimes, but not all the time.
No, I'm asking you.
You
In
don't
general,
wanna-
can a
I don't think
private
they should be able to
company
do that.
do whatever they want with their company?
In general, yes.
Okay, and if that private company,
Well, actually, no, that's not true.
No,
That's not
hold
true.
up. Why not?
It's not. Well, in general, okay. You said in general. You're
in
correct.
general.
In
Okay,
general,
and,
yes.
and if that company's doing things like not hiring black people because they're racist, and I say, well, I'm not going to go work for that company, and I'm not going to buy anything that they sell, and I'm not going to, use their services because they're clearly racist. All you've done is describe cancel culture of that company that's doing something stupid. That's it. Like, that's the whole circle. That is full circle for this whole argument. So
Yeah.
what you're saying is a company can do what it wants. I agree. But if that company does stupid things like racism, like they fire people because of the color of their skin, that you should probably not support that company. We
Well,
agree. And in that
Yeah.
agreement, we both say when more than two people agree.
Let's give him the last word.
Last word.
Well, so-
Triboulet's got to go. So whatever you want to say,
Okay.
the last 2 minutes are yours.
Okay, thank you. I think there are specific scenarios where corporations, specifically private corporations and private universities, can discriminate. I think there's specific situations where they can censor people or cancel, quote unquote, cancel them. Private, public, and government, no. When I said in general cancel culture, I encompassed the three institutions of power that we talked about: academic, corporate, and government. Now I know that it wasn't defined as government because that's not cancel culture because those aren't private citizens. And I know that private universities also are funded by privately, so they're not government public funded. So I think, but I would say that my just opinion, right? It's not necessarily that I'm right or wrong. It's just that my opinion, my preference is that we should have tolerance towards other people's views, to include views that may seem, negative, like the fact that marriage is between a man and a woman, or that's the main one. There's biological difference between men and women. That you should have separate, locker rooms for transgender people, things like that may sound very bad. I think that at some point we just have to have tolerance between everyone. If it's not like legitimately harming people directly, and it's just an opinion, there has to be some middle ground. Because if there's no middle ground, then we're going to get into a situation in the future where we're really at each other's throats, and I just don't want that. I want everyone to see each other's humanity, and also at the same time be able to disagree. But anyway, appreciate you guys' time, and I appreciate the debate. It was very
As
fruitful.
always,
I
man.
learned.
It's always fun. Appreciate you
So,
coming on, bro. We're gonna
great arguments, by the way. You guys are fantastic at debating these things. So
yeah, man, we love it, bro.
Try to kick it out, man. Appreciate you coming on.
Is there anything that you wanted to plug?
Yeah, I was gonna ask that.
not really. I don't have much to plug. So
All right, check out Morefreeus. If you have any questions, you can follow him. I know you said you set up a new social platform.
yeah, I have
Morefreeus.
Morefreeus on Twitter. I think it's Morefreus01. I have like one follower. So,
Well, get him
but
some more
either way,
followers, and if you guys have any questions for any of us, leave comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the video, guys. Morefreeus, we appreciate you coming on.
thank you. Happy to be here.
Hey, brother.
All right, take care. Bye.
Hi, my man. Be good, brother. Yo, Facade.
Right. That was cancel culture.
Yeah, that was a very frustrating conversation, dude.
Yes. M said good stuff right at the end. Obviously, we're not going to continue the conversation without him, but do want to do some tidy work on our end. And that means letting you guys know that we are back regular, at least for a little while, with the holiday come and gone. And Nico, our last guest, not being able to come in on a Tuesday. We went to a Wednesday last week. We should be back at Tuesday next week. Who's our guest next week?
Joseph Jackson.
Joseph Jackson. He was watching earlier, said hello. We said hello back in chat. Also, wanted to address, if you're still watching by chance, Jared mentioned a comment on Facebook. I tried responding accordingly in YouTube. It says, what about social media platform? Canceling people over the views that oppose theirs. That blurs the lines of society. Canceling and private organizations doing it. You're not wrong. There is a blurred perception there, but I think I made my point clear. When a private organization can kind of do what they want, and if you oppose what that private organization's doing, a good method of like demonstrating that you oppose that is by not utilizing their services, which is essentially just cancel culture.
Canceling.
So, did you want to add anything before we wrap up?
Oh, yeah, I was wanting to talk about the topic for next week. Yeah, with Joseph Jackson, he said he's bringing on his brother. I'm not sure if he meant that like figuratively or if he's been bringing his biological brother or not. But there's going to be two guests. So Joseph Jackson and someone else. And we're going to be talking about transitioning for minors, gender transition.
Gotcha.
So,
all right. Yeah, so that's going to be the topic next week. Be sure to tune in. We appreciate you guys tuning in, commenting. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, do all the things, all the social media things, because we've been bad at promoting ourselves. But we do really appreciate Relic Media for helping promote us. And if you guys want to join in on the show, comment, email, we're everywhere. Please let us know. Let us know what you want to talk about. See if we have enough to argue on. Join us on the show. We'll see you next week, guys.
Thanks, guys.